Hi, everybody. We're going to finish the book now. We're on chapter 39, and so there's 3 chapters left, so I will finish them off. See what happens. Chapter 39, No Going Back. The hilltop with the radio antenna is less than a mile away, but with no clear path or trail to follow, it might as well be 1,000. Probably we could make it on foot, but without the Jeep and a real road out, once we get there, there's no way to escape. Not with the huge horizon-wide fire facing at us, driven by hot gusts of wind almost strong enough to knock us down. I don't know how long we've got exactly, but at this rate, the fire will sweep over these hilltops in less than an hour, at most. We haven't got time to clear a path, even if we had a way to cut down trees, which we don't. So, we'll just have to give it a shot and hope the old vehicle can find its way through the scraggly trees and bushes that cover the hillside. Hang on. I put the Jeep in gear. We'll be going slow, but it'll be bumpy. If you feel us tipping over, try to throw yourself clear. Delphi nods vigorously, but doesn't say a word. I don't have to tell her how dangerous this is, plunging down a steep hillside without a path or a trail to follow. There's no going back once we head over the edge. I pat the dashboard for luck. Take care of us, dear lovely old Jeep, and we'll take care of you. That's a promise. Over the edge we go. For the first 100 yards or so, the steep slope is relatively wide open and only a few tree stumps to avoid. I hardly have to touch the gas pedal as we roll over the rough ground, rocking side to side. Then suddenly, we're tearing through low bushes that block our view. I try riding the brake, but it barely slows us down. Besides, if we slow down too much, we'll get stuck for sure. Don't touch the gas or the brake, I decide. Concentrate on steering, on seeing what's beyond the next row of bushes. You're doing good, Delphi shouts. To the left, see that tree? Then you're clear. That's how we do it, all the way down the slope, me steering like a maniac with my hands welded to the wheel, Delphi shouting out which way to turn, bushes and saplings smacking the sides of the vehicle as we go by, as if urging us along. Suddenly we break through the underbrush, lurching onto a rock-strewn ledge. The Jeep starts to skid sideways. I steer into the turn and we straighten. Finally, the trees get purchase on the slippery rocks. I've never heard purchase being used by that, but I assume it means like gain their traction. Back in control, I steer around the bigger boulders. Then there's grass under the wheels and the ledges behind us. We're picking up speed and Delphi is shouting out which way to go. A grove of thin little saplings ahead, too many to avoid. We roll right through, mowing them down. Branches whip at us, trying to snatch us out of our seats, but we hang on. We keep going, bumping over hard ground and soft dirt, rolling through bushes, skidding around bigger trees, and the occasional boulder that comes out of nowhere. I'm so focused on steering that I don't really get it that we made it to the bottom of the slope until the Jeep slows down and starts to roll backwards. I look over at Delphi. She's clinging to her seat with both hands. If her eyes were any bigger, they'd fall out of her face. That was interesting. She takes a deep breath. Working our way slowly up the next hill is way less exciting, but it takes just as much effort. A couple of times we have to backtrack when the trees get too dense, but we manage, finding our own switchback pathways when it gets too steep and barging straight ahead whenever possible. We finally get to the top of the hill. There isn't any part of me that doesn't hurt. My hands are so cramped, I can't pry my fingers off the wheel. My legs ache and my butt feels bruised. But it's all worth it, because we can see the radio tower looming over us. Close up, it looks old and rusty. The cables, the anchor it in place moan with the gusts of wind. The air is thickening with the eye-watering stink of fire. Even if we couldn't see it, the line of black clouds closing in, the orange flames racing over the treetops, we'd know the fire wasn't far away. We need to find a road, and fast. The Jeep bumps over the rough meadow around the radio tower. Delphi, trying to stand up in her seat, searching for an opening that might indicate a road. Neither of us is saying much because we're running out of time. I don't know what's going through Delphi's head, but my brain is thinking crazy thoughts, like, if we don't find a road, maybe we can climb to the top of the tower to get away from the fire. Might survive if the flames sweep through fast. But it's just as likely we'd end up like chunks of barbecue. I know, disgusting, but I can't help imagining the worst. We roll through the meadow, dead grass crunching under the tires, and steer around a small stand of scrawny spruce trees, eyes watering as the smoke gets worse, desperate for a road. At this point, any kind of road will do, even another road to nowhere, just so we can stay alive for a little while longer. Hey, Delphi shouts, pointing. Over there! What she spotted isn't a road, it's a building. A square, flat-roofed building made of cinder block. So cinder block would be like concrete, basically. Sitting in the middle of a clearing. White paint peeling and blistered on the sides, but the bold lettering over the door is still clearly visible. WRPZ 98.6 FM. It's him! I'm astonished. Fat Freddy! Delphi shakes her head. He must have gotten rescued somehow. He said it was his final broadcast, and that was last night. He's gone. Maybe not. I lean on the horn. Chapter 40. Ride the Falconries. The man who stumbles out of the cinder block building is a lot older than I expected from the sound of his voice. He's got a short white beard and a long white ponytail that goes almost to his waist. The ponytail reminds me of Willie Nelson, but Fat Freddy has a pot belly, and that spoils the resemblance, because Willie Nelson is really skinny. Wheezing from the smoke, he barely makes his way across the unpaved parking lot. "Oh my Lord!" he exclaims, his red-rimmed eyes taking us in. "You sent me 2 angels in a Jeep? Is there a road?" "Access road. Hasn't been paved in years. Hop in. Show us the way." I have to shout because the roaring of the approaching fire has gotten so loud it's not a normal sound. More like the trees are screaming. Must be my imagination, because trees don't scream, do they? Freddy scrambles into the back. We tear around the building, and sure enough, there's an old pothole-riddled road just wide enough for the Jeep. My heart soars. We've got a chance. From the back seat, Freddy leans forward, pitching his radio voice to be heard above the roar of the approaching fire. "Thanks for the ride, kids. Figured I was fried chicken for sure." "Everybody hang on," I yell. "I'll be going as fast as I can, and the road looks bad." We're just starting down the bumpy access road when the fire sweeps over the hillside, igniting the meadow and the underbrush and the stand of scrawny pines all at once. More an explosion than a fire, like the world was doused in gasoline and God was holding the match. But the only thing in my head is trying to stay alive. Too late to get ahead of the fire, so we have no choice but to find a way through it. The access road is steep, and the potholes are deep. Steer hard, yanking the wheel to avoid breaking an axle. All around us, trees ignite from the top down, jumping from crown to crown, as if the wildfire has been lifted into the air, into the tree tops. A wave of scalding heat makes it hard to breathe. "Give me your undershirt," Delphi shouts at Freddie. "Quick!" I can't see what she's doing, but a moment later, she ties a water-soaked rag over my mouth and nose, then does the same for herself and Freddie. We probably look like scruffy bandits, but it really helps. Breathing through a damp cloth is the best we can do under the circumstances. Maybe you think it's brave what we did, but courage had nothing to do with it. We were terrified, and we kept going because we had no choice. Down that winding access road, avoiding potholes, keeping as close to the middle as possible because fire is racing down both sides, exploding from tree to tree. I may have been screaming, not that anyone noticed or cared, screaming as much in anger as fear, because I couldn't help thinking about what happened to my dad when the Hummer hit the truck in Afghanistan. How the gasoline tanker he was driving rolled off the shoulder of the road, turning the rig upside down. How he was trapped in the cab as the gas poured out and then exploded. They say he was probably unconscious when it happened, but nobody knows for sure. Mom didn't want me to hear the details or read the report from his company, but I had to know. I had to, because my imagination made it even worse than the report, which concluded he perished in less than 30 seconds. 30 seconds can be an eternity if you're inside a fire. Believe me, I know. That's probably how long it takes to get all the way down the access road, which is only a few hundred yards. It finally levels out at the intersection with a paved road. I scream, "Which way?" And Freddie points to the left. We barrel down the middle of the road, a real road, not a trail, hitting 50 miles an hour on the speedometer, pedal all the way to the floor, with me hunched over the wheel, urging it to go faster, the old machine purring like it's young and brand new. Maybe it thinks we're on a battlefield in Korea. But wait, machines can't think, can they? This one can. In my imagination, because it was like the Jeep took over. I was holding the wheel, but the Jeep was steering because I was so distracted by the exploding trees that I couldn't think straight. I could hear Delphi and Freddie chanting, "Go, go, go!" But it was like something in a dream, like they were part of a soundtrack my dad used to play, a thrilling passage that for years I thought was called Flight of the Falconries. I used to imagine flocks of falcons diving into battle, claws outstretched, but it was never falcons at all. It was something from Old Norse folk tales called Valkyries, female angels of death who ride into the battlefield, deciding who will live and who will die and who will go to heaven. I wasn't ready for heaven. None of us were. We wanted to live, and it was the Jeep that helped us, never hesitating as the 70-year-old engine hit RPMs that, under normal circumstances, would make it seize up. That day it ran cool and smooth, and somehow it kept accelerating. Okay, that was me standing on the pedal as we headed downhill, and we flew down that road, something beautiful, catching up with the flames and passing them, blowing through the clouds of hot black smoke and emerging unscathed. Well, not quite. Burning cinders lit my hair on fire again, and Delphi jumped to put out the flames with her bare hands, shouting that, "We're going to make it, just keep going. You're doing great. You crazy little brother. Go, go, go. And I'm driving through the pain and the fear and coming out the other side. Even now, I have no idea if it was me or the Jeep that found our escape route. All I remember is that the road ended and the fire was catching up, surrounding us. We came off the paved road at 60 miles an hour, practically airborne, and then we were bouncing over a hard, grassy surface. I remember a couple of cottages flashing by and knew we were close to the lake, but I couldn't see it through the seething clouds of hot black smoke. If we'd stopped on the shore, we'd have been toast, like all these cottages and cabins, but we didn't. The Jeep never slowed down, and when the wind blew the smoke away, just for a second, there it was, right in front of us. A loading dock, heading straight into the beautiful lake. No, not a loading dock, I'm sorry, a long dock. A long dock that was as good as a road, wide enough for the Jeep, and we tore down that dock at full speed, racing like no tomorrow as the fire swept around the lake, turning everything to flame, incinerating an entire evacuated village. Maybe you heard how we flew off the dock and out into the lake and landed in the one and only spot where we had a chance to survive, shallow enough so we wouldn't drown, and situated in exactly the right place. The Loon Lake Miracle Spot, they called it. The one place in the entire lake where the air was far enough from the fire so it was possible to breathe without searing our lungs. Searing would be like burning. The water was only about 3 feet deep, but that was just enough to protect us and to keep us cool as the rest of the world went up in flames. 2 kids and an old man sitting in a sunk Jeep with the water up to our armpits, laughing our heads off, glad to be alive. How cool is that? All right, chapter 41. This is the last chapter. This is the end, my friends. Delphi told me later that I was yelling, "Nobody dies! Nobody dies!" all the way down the mountain. Honestly, I don't remember that part. All I remember is the tops of the trees exploding like artillery shells and the flash of super hot air that wanted to melt us, and Freddie clinging to the Jeep like life depended on it, which of course it did. They said at the core of a crown fire, the temperatures can exceed 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. One breath of air that hot and you're dead. Later I learned that the Great North Woods Fire was the largest ever in the history of the state, and that at times it spread almost as fast as the dry windstorms that pushed it. All we knew that day was the fire kept chasing us, and no matter how fast we raced to get away, it was faster catching up. They tried to make out like I was a hero. Huh, some hero. I was scared the whole time, from the very first day. There were lots of real heroes in the Great North Woods Fire. The long-haul trucker who drove his rig through 10 miles of blazing highway to rescue his wife and children. The team of volunteer firefighters from Belfast who died trying to evacuate those people who had taken refuge in the church cellar. Dozens of real heroes, hundreds probably, and most of their stories were never heard. Personally, if a thing can be a hero, that old Jeep deserves a medal. By the way, the grandson of the man who owned the Jeep towed it out of the lake and had it completely rebuilt and presented to his grandfather, Captain Aldrich Brown, U.S. Army retired, on his 90th birthday. I know because I was invited to the birthday party. The old man looked so much like the young man in the photograph. It was eerie. I guess running a logging operation for 40 years keeps you in shape because his old uniform fit. The coolest thing was that after Captain Brown climbed into the Jeep to try it out, he saluted me. And then he handed me the ownership papers. That's right. The Jeep is in our garage under a dust sheet waiting for me to turn 16. As for Delphi, we talk all the time and we see each other whenever. Yesterday she told me she was in love with some guy she met online in the grocery store. Haha, is how she put it. However, it happened, good for her. We were both relieved to hear that the dirt bikers survived and were arrested for arson. Charles and James Binney, who destroyed dozens of homes and helped the wildfire spread, and whose hatred of outsiders landed them in jail. Good riddance, I say. Oh yeah, you're probably wondering what happened with my mom. That's a really long story, but the short version is, at the height of the fire, she promised herself that if I survived, she'd complete rehab, which she did. She's back home now, managed to keep her job at the physical therapy clinic too, and has really thrown herself into helping other people. Says it takes her mind off feeling sorry for herself, and that's a good thing. When she's not working or looking after me, she's out in her garden, weeding like crazy, and bringing it back to life. Today, a rose bush she thought was dead started to bloom. It's been a long time since I've seen her so happy. The truth is, she's still pretty shaky about what happens next. I keep telling her, Mom, nobody knows what happens next until it happens. All we can do is take it one day at a time. The end. What do y'all think? It was pretty exciting, I thought. The next book that I'm going to read, I thought we'd go for something a little lighter and more fun, is Clementine. And I'm not sure if any of you have read any of those stories before, but she's kind of funny. She reminds me a lot of an older Junie B. Jones. So I think we'll enjoy it. All right. See you guys later.